All right. See if anybody joins. I just got a few minutes here. I see somebody's watching. Let me know in the chat where you're watching from. What is up, Dan? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Got time for just a couple questions if you guys wanted to ask them about anxiety, panic attacks, depersonalization, realization, health anxiety, existential OCD. From Massachusetts, awesome. I've actually been to Boston. I've actually got some cousins out there, and whenever I was about maybe 10 years old, so it's been 25 years ago, I went to Boston. Hey, Angie. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. DJD says, could you talk about hyper awareness of consciousness? Yeah, so, this would be sometimes called existential OCD, and it's not just whenever you have existential questions like we all have, like what happens after you die, what is the purpose of life. With existential OCD, it's where your brain has kind of put a magnifying glass on anything related to existence, consciousness, the nature of reality, the afterlife, things like that. And there are continual thoughts and obsessions over existence that bring a lot of stress. And I dealt with it for several months. And I have a lot of my clients that I work with that go through that as well. And it's curable, but it's very devastating. Abigail from Kentucky. Okay, well, nice to hear from you, Abigail. And also Dan says, what are some good steps to get into the body? Progressive muscle relaxation is a really cool tool to use that. MKM says from Oklahoma. Okay, yeah, my mom's mom, so my grandma on my mom's side is from Oklahoma, actually, and so I've been out there a couple times. Awesome. You said Boston is cool, feels like the 1700s when you go into the old town. Oh, wow. Well, that's really neat. I don't know much about the 1700s, but that's really cool. Anybody got some other questions that I can answer real quick? Come here. Come on. Come on. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come here. Come here. This is my dog, Dolly. Literally the best dog of all time. Hey, wait here. Will you look? Look. Will you say hi? Literally such a good cuddler. Let's see here. Feels like I'm watching myself or doing a first-person POV recording. Yeah, that's depersonalization. Yeah, you feel like you're watching yourself on a video camera, almost like you're on like a first-person shooter video game or something like that. You may look at your arms especially, or your legs, or it depends. Sometimes the feeling of detachment is isolated to certain parts of your body. Sometimes you feel detached from all of your body. But yeah, that's what it feels like. Angie says, some days I'm okay, other days I feel the blues. Been dealing with this for about 4 months now. Okay, what are you dealing with specifically? And sorry to hear about that. What is the process like when you go into your RISE program for DPDR? Well, it would look like we would do an audit of your recovery. We would take a look at your situation and spend probably at least an hour just me going over your recovery with you. And then we would begin private coaching where you could ask all the questions that you need. We also do group coaching. There's a course that you'd be applying, and we get started really fast, and people are seeing profound results. Kevin from Michigan, how important is exercise when going through all this? Going through what? So try to specify what you guys are experiencing. I'm sure most of you are going through a trauma state and, DPDR, but some people are just only experiencing anxiety, or maybe you're just dealing with health anxiety, or, so try to let me know. So exercise is really, really important, but you don't need to overdo it, right? So, I would say 15 to 20 minutes of gentle exercise, at least 4 to 5 days a week is going to be really important. But I emphasize gentle. Like, if you're coming out of severe anxiety or DPDR, the last thing that you want to do is over exercise. And I see that very frequently, especially with my clients that I call my high performance clients. So these are like, you know, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, executives, athletes, doctors, people that live a very high performance lifestyle, meaning they're the people that wake up early, they do saunas and cold plunges and hit the gym and eat healthy. They have a tendency to think, oh, okay, well, going to the gym is positive and exercise is good. So surely if I just do a lot more of that, everything will be fixed. But if you're dealing with severe anxiety, especially DPDR, your body has a lot of fatigue in it. And so you can actually overdo it. And so exercise it's definitely important, but you need to do gentle exercise for, small amounts of time. Versa Vision says, hey, Jordan, have you ever worked with a client who was going through DPDR/the freeze response and developed extreme anxiety around eye contact? Yes, I have. I have worked. I can remember those clients because no, it's not like super common, but I definitely have had that before with people. And generally speaking, I never used to make much eye contact with people either. I do now, but I think that just came as I grew more confident and calm and things like that. But no, there are people that I've worked with that had like a huge phobia of eye contact, and we had to work through that for sure. And maybe it was triggered because whenever they looked at people, it triggered, them feeling detached from people, kind of more depersonalization type thing. Or just they were just generally anxious about it. What do you do when friends and family feel like strangers? Well, it's not necessarily that you do anything specific for that, because that's appropriate whenever your nervous system is in a trauma response, which is whenever you've reached a state of nervous system overwhelm, your brain starts to shut down the structures that are responsible for feeling connected to your body and your surroundings. And so we need to get your body out of a trauma state. So check out my free masterclass. It's in my profile. It's in all of my video descriptions. It'll show you the 5 basic shifts to make to go on that journey of getting your nervous system out of the freeze response. But that symptom is appropriate. So one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they try to directly get rid of symptoms that are appropriate for the state that their nervous system is in. And that's because they don't understand that these symptoms are not the root problem, and they're also not dangerous. They're not there to hurt you. It's actually your nervous system trying to protect you. So we want to change your state, which is primarily done through your physiology and your focus. That's what determines your state. Dan says, what is your opinion on alcohol while in a trauma state? Yeah, you probably don't want to do that, because it's going to cause dehydration, which is going to lead to more fatigue, and fatigue and exhaustion are what are keeping you in a trauma state, which is a state of nervous system overwhelm. And so I've actually seen a bad alcohol experience induce a trauma state in people that weren't even in a trauma state before, which, remember, trauma is a state of nervous system overwhelm. And so I recommend that my clients don't drink any alcohol, not just during recovery, but forever. And we now know conclusively that no amount of alcohol is good for you. And based upon, there's a doctor who's done like more brain scans than anybody else in the world, maybe even in history, and he says any amount of alcohol shrinks your brain. And so I was raised to believe, my uncles and parents told me, like, not whenever I was a kid, but I heard them say this, like, oh yeah, a glass of wine a day, it's good for your heart. That was based on some very old studies or just ways of thinking. That's been disproven. No amount of alcohol is good for you. Now, I'm not going to judge you if you drink alcohol. But I would say if you're going through anxiety, especially if you've got DPDR, which is due to a state of overwhelming stress, there's a lot of fatigue and exhaustion in your body. The last thing that you want to do right now is add to that by dehydrating yourself because of the alcohol. And it's one of the most number one questions that I get asked about by my clients because maybe they're a social drinker or whatever. But I'll also say, again, I'm not trying to be your parent here or anything like that, but my mom's dad was an abuser, and he dealt with his anxiety with alcohol, and it literally destroyed that entire family. And it's always the people that think that it would never affect them as far as, substance abuse that it happens to. And so don't underestimate it, right? Never underestimate nicotine or alcohol or any of this stuff, okay? Because it can really, really mess you up. So I would say stay away from it. So username A says, where would you rank diet, vitamin/mineral deficiency in recovery? It's extremely important. Some of you, if you would just clean up your diet, you will see your anxiety and stress drop by 30% or more. Some of you, and this is not going to be very common, it could get rid of most of your symptoms of anxiety or even overwhelming stress that's inducing DPDR if you will just clean up your diet. You might be dealing with something called reactive hypoglycemia, which is where you eat a bunch of empty carbohydrates, a lot of processed foods, your blood sugars spike really high after you eat, and then they drop really low, and your body triggers an adrenaline response to stabilize your blood sugars. That could be causing panic, anxiety, and eventually maybe that all builds up and it's causing DPDR. So yeah, nutrition is extremely, extremely important when it comes to your nervous system. You are what you eat. So I would rank it as, like, the ranking would go number 1, co-regulation. Humans heal humans. 45% of healing anxiety and DPDR, according to some major studies that have been replicated over and over again, wasn't some one-off rogue study, shows that humans heal humans. Co-regulation, working with somebody that validates your experience, that can build hope in you, have that secure attachment relationship, is super important. Second is a body-based strategy. You are up here. Not you specifically, Dan, although you probably are. Or A, sorry, username A. Pretty much everybody that comes to me, they're in their head. And you're not in your body. You want to know why you're not in your body? Because it's too painful. And this is called interoception, the experience of the embodied self. And whenever your body starts to be bombarded with all kinds of negative physical sensations that come from your body going into fight, flight, freeze response, and you don't know how to release that buildup and befriend the body, what do? Shoop. I'm going to stay in my head. I'm going to live perpetually disembodied. And this is why that distraction stuff that is being taught is so destructive and devastating for people, because it's not dealing with the root of the buildup in the body. It's the last thing that you want to do. And yeah, people sometimes will see results with that, but the root isn't being dealt with. And you can't run from your body forever. Eventually, you're going to have to face it. And that's a big thing that I do with my clients, is I help them face their body and get rid of all the tension, adrenaline, and emotion in their body. And eventually, their body is their safe place. And once your body is your safe place, well, then you can be present again. That's one of the greatest joys of my life. Like, my wife and daughter just went out to dinner with some family, and just being able to be present and just have a good conversation and enjoy that, spending time with my kids and my wife every day, I live for that. But I spent most of my life living perpetually in my head, and I was not able to be present, because to be present, you have to be safely embodied, and you cannot be safely embodied if your body is just chock full of tension, adrenaline, emotion, and fatigue. right? And so, and then people, numb their body. That's where alcohol comes in, unhealthy food, uh, nicotine, all kinds of things. And that doesn't make you a bad person at all. You're just wanting to feel better. And nobody has taught you how to self-regulate, which is directly releasing that buildup. And then you probably haven't had enough co-regulation either. There's my cat, Daisy. Hey, Daisy, say hi. Say hi. Literally the best cat in the world. I'm a cat person because of this cat right here. Let's see here. When you say it's too painful to be in your body, do you mean actual pain or mental? So, whenever I say pain, I'm not necessarily referring to like physical pain or like stabbing or shooting. That's not the pain I'm talking about. I'm being more general with that. It's uncomfortable for you to be embodied. Let's use the word uncomfortable, right? Because especially if you suppress your emotions, which is another reason why people end up in a trauma state that induces DPDR and other trauma symptoms, is because they're stuffing down their emotions, right? Emotions need to be released. You have to face them, feel them, fully experience them in order for them to peak and then come down and process out of your body. And people, usually beginning in childhood because of their caregivers suppressing their own emotions, or maybe even teaching them to suppress their emotions, they start to run from their emotions. And emotions are experienced in the form of physical sensations in the body. And so if you haven't faced your emotions and released them in a safe way, the emotions are just going to be replaying over and over again on repeat, because there's going to be some sort of sensory trigger that just keeps bringing them up to the surface. And that's going to mean that your body is constantly being bombarded by negative physical sensations. And whenever your body's super uncomfortable and you don't know how to release those emotions, you don't know how to calm the body and befriend the body, you're going to want to escape. And so you start to live disembodied. You want to escape interoception, which is the experience of the embodied self, right? What do I eat usually? So I basically, for the meat, I'll eat chicken or fish. And then I eat a lot of berries, uh, Greek yogurt, chia seeds, flax seeds, leafy greens. That's usually, and I'm not claiming I have the perfect diet, but it's very low on the glycemic index and it doesn't have a negative impact on my blood sugar. So that's basically what I eat usually. Let's see here. Hayden says, I've had chronic derealization for 3 years and I feel now it's the worst it's been. I keep getting weird head sensations. Feels like my head is filling up and triggers panic attacks. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Yeah, it's, see a doctor for sure if you're concerned about that, but having uncomfortable head sensations is extremely common. Versa Vision says, thinking my nervous system is all out of whack. It very well could be. A says, he's right. I had a week of eating clean, and I had anxiety drop by 30 to 40%, and then I ate an empty carb meal. Insane reactive hypoglycemia, absolutely crashed and felt so anxious. Yeah, guys, food is mood. You are what you eat. Diet is very, very important for your nervous system. And I did not understand this until I started to have some of my own issues, where I would get those spikes of adrenaline after I ate my meals, and I didn't know what was going on for a while. But I got with the doctor, and I'm not hypoglycemic either, so it's reactive hypoglycemia. Anybody can experience it. Again, it's whenever you eat too many carbohydrates, your blood sugar spike really high, and then they drop super low, and then your body triggers an adrenaline response to stabilize your blood sugars. And yeah, so you've heard of somebody getting hangry. It's usually because their blood sugars are really low. So anyway, very, very important. Keto diet is good. Paleo diet's good. But and again, I'm working on a certification. I'm going through a certification program for nutrition. But, you just want to have a healthy balance of proteins, carbs, and fats with every meal. Right? And the carbohydrates don't need to be pure sugar and processed. Have you seen people whose DPDR was triggered by a psych med? I believe taking an antidepressant triggered mine. Absolutely. Yeah. DPDR can definitely be a side effect of different anti-anxiety, antidepressant medications for sure. Because for whatever reason, that person's nervous system just doesn't jive with that medication, and it creates overwhelm, and then their brain thinks that they're being eaten by a lion, and then DPDR trigger, because that's your brain's way of dissociating you, which comes from a Latin root word that means to sever or separate. So it's your brain separating you from your body and from the material world, just in case you're being eaten by a lion. So yeah, for sure. And so, if somebody came to me and they said, hey, I have no history of stress or anxiety, well, I guess they wouldn't be taking an anti-anxiety med unless they did. But anyway, if they said they had never experienced DPDR prior to the medication, then I probably wouldn't take them on as a client. I would say, hey, work with your doctor on that. That's clearly just a bad reaction to the medication. Angie says, I've been expressing my emotions all my life. I'm 39 years old. No one ever taught me how to deal with them and compartmentalize them. Well, thank you for sharing that, Angie. I really appreciate that vulnerability. And just know that you're not alone. And the beginning of releasing your emotions is understanding that they are not dangerous. They can't hurt you. Okay? And I'm not saying you didn't know that, but it's just good to remind yourself, no matter how much pain that I feel, it can't hurt me. And then the second thing that you need to know is that it appears paradoxical, but the way to process your emotions is to be emotional in a safe way. And whenever I work with clients, this is a big thing that we work on. I've got 2 different trainings called Mastering Your Emotions, and I teach them how to master particularly emotions that involve anger or sadness. But I'll give you some tips. Let's say with anger, for example. Well, first of all, eat something. Eat a couple spoons of peanut butter. It could be low blood sugars. But as long as your diet's good and you're not dealing with some sort of blood sugar issue, you might have some anger, associated with a specific, situation or, or person. And if you need to do this with like a therapist or somebody safe, that's definitely good to do. But you basically just focus on that situation that induces the anger. And I'm just using anger as an example. You didn't say that you're dealing with that. I'm just explaining. And you allow yourself to get angry. You might feel your fist clench up. You might feel your jaw tighten up. You actually want to allow your body to tighten up, and screaming into a pillow can be very, very helpful. Also, if you have a lot of anger that needs to process, get on Facebook Marketplace and find a punching bag. Not one of those, the little ball things that I'm talking like the full-blown punching, kicking bag. It has water, underneath it. And just beat the crap out of that thing, right? We want to release the emotions in a safe way to where it doesn't hurt anybody. So anyway, that's a couple things that you can do. There's something I teach my clients called an emotional closure letter. So you basically write a letter. You don't actually send this letter to anybody, but it's like a pretend letter, but you visualize as if it's being sent to a person or situation. And you say, dear, and you can type this, you can write this on a computer, and then you're just focusing on letting your mind bring up anything it needs to bring up, and you're writing that out, but you're focused on feeling and allowing all the physical sensations to manifest. And usually Anger is a good emotion to start with because sometimes whenever you get rid of that anger, it calms your nervous system to the point that you can start crying and releasing other emotions, right? You may feel sadness or shame or other secondary emotions. But anyway, yeah, and you never send the letter or the text or the email to anybody. It's just a kind of a visualization exercise, but it's very effective. So anyway, and then especially with crying, you know, really just exaggerate it. Like let your just, just really let your body fully feel that emotion in a safe way. And it'll come in waves. It's like waves of the ocean. It'll peak, get to max intensity, it'll come down. There might be another wave, and eventually it'll be gone. But what ends up happening is that emotion starts to come up how many times, and I've done this, of course. We all do this to a degree, but you start to feel the need to cry, and you're like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And you just push it down. Crying is part of how our body heals itself, right? It doesn't mean you're weak. Doesn't mean anything, right? Tears are liquid healing. You have to start reconditioning your mind to associate emotions as being a basic biological necessity for our body to heal itself, rather than being associated with shame, which could have been conditioned because of how you were raised or society, especially as men, right? We get told, oh, it's so feminine for you to cry. I cry. It's not very often, right? And let's say, yeah, maybe we cry less than women, but men still need to cry sometimes. And we need to feel that and face it. That's the strongest thing that you can do, is male or female, is to face and feel your emotions and let them process, because so you can move on. Because the alternative is that you suppress them, and then every time that there's some sort of sensory trigger that triggers that emotion, it's going to start to come up, and it's going to make you very emotionally volatile in relationships. It can even ruin relationships. That's not strength, right? So anyway, with that being said, there's some tips for processing emotion. Awesome. Is emotional numbness a part of depersonalization? No, not specifically. Whenever you're in a trauma state, which is a state of nervous system overwhelm, one of the ways that your nervous system can respond is by numbing you out to all emotion. Yes, but it's not necessarily connected exclusively to depersonalization. All right. Well, I hope this has helped you guys. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And I'll try to do at least once a week on these live streams, if not every other week. But, okay, Paris. What's up, Paris? How long did it take you to feel more like yourself when you quit marijuana? So that's the problem, is I didn't. I mean, eventually I did. But, after I had the bad marijuana experience, a couple days later, my symptoms came back. And I wasn't high anymore. And that's because I had a lot of suppressed emotion. I had been severely bullied. Parents went through a messy divorce and just had a lot of anxiety. And the marijuana experience in 2008 was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And so it wasn't actually the marijuana that caused it. If it wasn't the marijuana, it would have been something else. There was a lot of buildup of stress in my body. And, but anyway, eventually after about a year, I came across some acceptance techniques that actually really helped me get rid of panic attacks, and also the DPDR. The DPDR didn't show up very often after that for a couple years, only in like really extreme periods of stress, but it did still happen. But I was just so happy to be over constant DPDR and panic attacks. I thought I was cured. And I told everybody, hey, acceptance is where it's at. And yet, because I never got in my body, which is interoception, the experience of the embodied self, I never learned to face my emotions. I didn't get my diet right. I didn't have boundaries in life. I was a people pleaser. And I ended up getting into some very abusive relationships. I ended up connecting with some people that had narcissistic personality disorder, which I didn't even know what that was for a long time. And wasn't prioritizing sleep. wasn't hydrating, wasn't listening to my body. And eventually it all built up again and DPDR came back and my acceptance techniques did not touch it at that point. And so if you guys hear me in a short video or a long video saying, hey, acceptance is not enough, it's true. It may yield temporary results, but I'm telling you from my own experience and having done this for 6 years now full time, you know, this acceptance and distraction stuff, I'm telling you guys, it's not going to work in the long term. You need to include the body. It's very, very important, right? Like Bessel van der Kolk's book says, the body keeps the score. Your body is a war zone, and you need to get your body in a much better place. Again, relaxation, rest, you know, taking enough breaks, hydration, nutrition, boundaries in life. These are all things that you can start doing to get your body in a better place. And what you'll find is the more that your body is rested and relaxed and in a good state, the more that your mind will be in a much better place. Okay? You change the state of the mind by changing the state of the body, not the other way around. Okay, guys. Ishtara says, very helpful as always. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Dan says, appreciate all you do. No problem. Angie said, thank you. This helps. Awesome. All right. Well, Paris and Santi, Tarek, what's up? Good to see you, Tarek. A and Ghost 08 and anybody else who's watching. Hope this really helped you, and I hope you have a good night. I'll see you guys in the next week or two. As always, if you guys would like to apply to work with me one-on-one to overcome these symptoms, there's a link in my YouTube profile and all my videos, and there's also that free 5 Shifts Masterclass that'll get you headed in the right direction as well. Okay, guys, that's it. Take care. Have a good night, and have a good weekend.